I can go and talk about horses to anybody who will listen, or most people who just won't listen, and I'll just still talk about horses to them.
Guys, you don't know how much I've edited out of these because I know you don't want to listen to so much about horses.
So true.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or therapy. Our full disclaimer can be found in the show notes. Enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Man Up Together podcast. My name is Alex Peskin, and I'm here once again with my lifelong friend and co-host, Bobby Jacobs. Bobby, welcome back.
Thank you.
It was nice to be able to do this with Noah and enjoy connecting with him, but it's also good to be back to the regular stuff. I was thinking about it, though. I feel like we broke some very real ground there. This may be the first time two brothers have ever done a podcast before.
I can't think of another podcast.
I feel like we are reaching new heights here.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
So pretty exciting.
I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to be doing a podcast episode about our podcast.
About podcasting in general.
And the brothers of the New Heights will 100% feature, at least in part of it. So, but yeah, and I would say that our viewership probably rivals that of the other podcast. We'll just call it the other podcast. I think that's what Kylie does on her podcast. She just says the other. She just says the other podcast.
Nice.
Yeah. But Noah, thank you for stepping in. It was awesome. I thought it was great. It was really fun to listen to you and your brother just talk in a different way. I think, I've known obviously you for a long time. I've known Noah for just as long, basically. Yeah. And it's just great to see, I think, how your relationship has matured, how it's changed. And it was great to hear, I think, a little bit about how your relationship has grown. I liked when you were both, I know you guys have an age difference, right? But when you kind of brought it up as like, yeah, it's a big thing when you're 11 and 3. And I was like, that was real. Like you guys were 11 and 3 at one point, and that's a big age difference. My dad, actually, him and his siblings, his oldest brother was 17 or 18 years older than him. And so when he talked about his relationship with his brother, it was like, I didn't have one. Like he was in college by the time that my dad had any memory of his brother. And so I always think those age gaps are interesting and unique. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to see a good picture of our age gap, I had my mom search through some of her collection and we put one on Instagram. So Man Up Together podcast on Instagram, you'll be able to see what Noah's hiding behind that beard.
Oh, those cheeks. I love it. It was cool to see also, obviously I know Noah's a dad now, but hearing him talk about his daughter and his experience being a dad, it was great. So Noah, appreciate it. Mark, my brother, next up, you're on the hook. We're going to do it at some point. But no, it's been really good. How was your trip to Seattle?
It was good. Yeah. Always good to be with the family. Yeah. Spend time.
Seattle's a cool place.
The babies. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely unique. Very different than here.
And did you guys do any hiking?
We did.
Nice.
The girls loved it. We did a hike that ended at the beach.
Ooh, that's cool.
And it's not like a Florida beach
little rocky,
or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it was very cool to sit there and have lunch by the beach and then hike on back.
Nice.
The big giant trees. And so it's really nice.
Awesome. I love it. Well, and you had someone to watch the World Cup final with that apparently has some vested interest in football, soccer. We're not calling it football, no, I'm sorry. But some vested interest in it. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed the World Cup final as much as someone who
can enjoy a not great game.
Yeah, right. So I was very much rooting for penalty kicks, not going to lie. I was a little bummed that it didn't end that way, but congrats to Spain. And I loved hearing kind of all of your knowledge about the sport. I didn't know a lot of those things about Holland. Is that how you say it?
Yeah. I
Holland.
Asked him. I think it actually happened on the episode. Yeah.
Holland. And I will say one thing. No, I'm going to call you out one place that I thought was absolutely hysterical was when you talked about Alex's current wife. Current and forever. I'm just going to say that out there. But current wife, I thought was...
She is my current wife. I don't have a previous wife. Hope not to have a future wife. But she is my current wife in some way, I guess.
I love it. But no, it was great. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good times. So today, again, we're going to talk about podcasts. So let's get into
why do men like this?
And today for Why Do Men Like This, we're getting real meta here today. We're going to talk about why do men like to start podcasts?
Yeah.
Who better to ask than two men who started a podcast? Yeah.
All right, go for it.
Why do men like to start podcasts? I think could go to a few different directions here. One is generally men love to hear themselves talk. See episode with why do
Mansplaining.
men like to mansplain? Maybe there's a similarity
Yeah.
to that one. Why do men like to start podcasts? Also, I feel like there's a lot of business mindedness,
Yeah.
and this is the booming business and media right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure a lot of it is like, how can I build my brand? How can I make money? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think we haven't found that part out yet, but
we'll get there.
We'll get there maybe.
Yeah. I like what you're onto here. I think there's something about when you're doing a podcast, right? There's a desire to take your knowledge and maybe give it to other people, right? Or at least present what you know, or help to teach something, right? I think for a lot of people, for a lot of men, there is that desire to be a teacher, right? Maybe not in the actual sense. We had an episode on that where we had a very big discrepancy in teachers as men, but I think there's a desire to like teach the things that we know, right? And not for everybody, right? Some people don't like that, don't like the public speaking aspect of it, but I think that's part of it, is wanting to get that out there. But to flip back on the public speaking thing, a podcast can happen in a room by yourself. So maybe for those people that are interested in telling people what they know and getting their knowledge out there, or maybe just interacting with others in a way that they feel comfortable because they don't feel comfortable standing up in front of a room with 10, 20, 100 people. This is an avenue for public speaking that's maybe not public, if you will. So
that's
I don't know if there's something there.
I feel like that resonates with me.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. I don't like standing up in front of a lot of people and talking. And when I do, I find that I talk very fast. I lose my train of thought, and I am not able to do a justice to what's happening in my head.
Yeah, less articulate to get that point across, for sure.
Yeah, and I think there are some of that still happens with the podcast, but especially as we're doing it more and more, it's becoming easier and easier to not get stuck in that. Much like if I were to speak in front of 50 people once a week, it probably would get better, but this feels way safer.
Yeah.
And there's something scary about it, because what we're doing is trying to be vulnerable in a way that we aren't always as men, and even in our relationship, no matter how close we are, aren't always, but still there's a safety to it. I picked someone very safe to do that with.
There you go.
Very purposefully. And so, that is an interesting part of this. How can you get yourself out there in a way that you don't have to feel it when it's happening?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I think too, there's a place of, it's an opportunity for people to get out there that's accessible. It's not, doesn't cost you $1 million to start a podcast. I mean, in theory, you can do it on your phone. I think in essence, you can do, there are all the apps and things that are available. And so I think that there's an opportunity for people that don't have the built-in audience, if you will. And then I think there's also a place for people to connect with other people that have similar interests that are all over the place. There are podcasts about everything, right? I remember as we were researching the name for this podcast, there was one name that we had thrown around that was owned by a couple of urologists that were doing a urology podcast.
There were a lot of different forms of the Man Up kind of podcasts, and none of them were doing exactly what we're doing. So that was cool. Just the name was challenging to get. Yeah. But it sounds in a way like you're actually moving into what's good about men liking to start podcasts. I think that's a great point you're bringing up, that this is a way that people all over the country, all over the world can connect over the same thing. I know a lot of podcasts, there's communities like Discord communities or whatever, can connect a lot of people that can bring you together on a very specific thing that you all like and are interested in. And it's accessible in a way that maybe isn't in a lot of other areas of life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big, I mean, we talked about this, I'm a big airplane dork. I listen to a couple of like pilot podcasts. And again, I'm not in that community, but there's a lot of those enthusiasts, right? And I think you can say the same thing about anything. There was a gentleman that I worked with. He had a podcast where he opened Pokemon cards and did like trading card things. Fun. And again, there's so many different, I think, things that you can talk about through this avenue of podcasting. It gives a platform to all of those things. That being said, I want to maybe go into what's not so good about podcasting. Are we ready for that?
Sure.
It gives a platform to say a lot of things, right? Yeah. And there's no, theoretically there is, but there's no gatekeeping, right?
Right. And all you have to do is be good at getting people to want to listen to you. There's a way to get someone to want to listen to you, even if they don't exactly agree with your thoughts yet. But if they keep listening and you keep getting it in there,
Yeah.
then I guess we're kind of talking about nanosphere stuff and,
Right.
and other things like that you can kind of be indoctrinated into something that may not be as healthy or great.
Well, and there's, like we said, there's podcasts about everything, whether it's religious, whether it's social issues, whether it's politics, what have you. And again, it's not for us to say which of those are right, wrong, or indifferent. I think we can all agree that hateful messaging has no place or should have no place.
But you can find it.
But you can find it, right? And it's not hard to find. And I think that's what could be a negative. I think outside of maybe the obvious of, you can platform people or thoughts or ideas that should not have a platform. Maybe some of the other negatives could be if there's people that get too sucked into just the world of podcasts where they maybe exclude the people around them, right? So I wouldn't say this necessarily just something about podcasting, where you could do this with TV, movies, what have you. But if you're shutting out the rest of the world and maybe focusing too much just on the voices in your podcast head,
oh sure,
I wonder if that can maybe be something that it wouldn't necessarily be the greatest thing in the
like
world.
just another option for escapism, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always a place for you to maybe talk to a real person every now and then.
Yeah. Maybe one more thing that's not so good about men starting so many podcasts is if there were less, then more people would find us.
I mean,
so we wouldn't get this lost in the sea.
Yeah.
I actually, on a podcast recently, heard the amount, like there were some 10 or 100,000 active podcasts. Wow. And then they said the median amount of downloads they get on a monthly basis. We are in the median. So
there we go.
We are the median podcast. But of 100,000 podcasts, that means we're 50,000. So
I do also love the use of the median. Coming from Stats Guy, I love the use of the median versus the mean on that one.
Yeah.
Big importance there for sure.
Yeah. I think he was saying like the top 50 podcasts have 90-something% of the amount of downloads.
Yeah.
And so
not surprising
on that note is now when we say, remember, share this with somebody you care about.
Subscribe, download, get it out there. Let us know if
we appreciate the people who are listening right now, and we aren't actually doing this to try and become a top 10 podcast or to be famous or anything like that. We're actually getting so much out of this and hoping other people do as well.
Yeah.
If it does become popular, I wouldn't hate that.
No.
Either. Yeah. I guess
that dovetails well into kind of what we want to talk about.
Yeah. But on the topic of Noah, one more time.
Yep.
The reason I thought of this as why do men like this is because when we started this, I think one episode was out and he called me. He said, "Hey, I listened to the podcast." I was like, "Oh, that's so nice." He said, "Yeah," and I shared it with my friends. I said, in his upside down funnel.
Yep.
He's got a lot of friends. And he said, "Yeah," I said, "My brother did that thing that all men do. He started a podcast." And I was like, "Huh, that is a thing, isn't it?" And so I'm glad we're coming all the way back around here. Why do men like this? Yeah. Why do men like starting podcasts? They do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any other thoughts about it, if you've started a podcast, if you want to start a podcast, we've gone through the mechanics of it. We're not experts, but we got some ring lights.
Yeah.
That makes us experts, right?
Honestly, that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. Ring lights. That's it.
Yeah. So let's go deeper into some more podcast stuff here now.
Let's do it.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about why we started this.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's something we've talked about in the past, but always good to get a little bit clearer on it. We'll talk about some of the podcasts we listen to and what we hope to get out of those things. And then we'll end by talking about some of the less good influences in the podcasting world and what that means, especially for men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. So why did we start this podcast? What are we trying to get out of this? What do we hope other people get out of this?
And what's changed a little bit since we started it? How's it changed us maybe in that regard? So I'm going to kick it to you. This is your idea. I remember you came up to me. It was New Year's Eve party, right? Pretty sure it was New Year's Eve party.
It may have been over a beer pong table, actually.
It was over a beer pong table. 100% over a beer pong table.
That's just our friendship.
That's what it is. Sorry, no. Beer pong over whiskey right now. If it wasn't beer pong, we wouldn't have Men Up Together podcast. So
yes. And I know I've told this before, but I had been thinking about it for a while and I was like, what's the perfect way to ask it so that he sees that I'm serious about this and I've thought about it and I can make it sound like something that Bobby would want to do with me. And I think I said, I'm thinking about starting a podcast and I'm wondering if and you're like, yep. It's like, what? I did all of this rehearsing in my head and you just, well, I guess that's good that he said yes, but
hey, not many people I'd say yes to just about anything to, and you're pretty much on that list. So
I appreciate that. Appreciate that. And that you continue to say yes.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay. So why? There's actually a very specific, I guess we talk more about podcasts here. There is a podcast that I listen to. It's Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. And its premise is supposed to be about tech and business.
Okay.
But it's gotten deeper than that. And Scott Galloway, one of his passions is talking about masculinity. And he's written a book about his journey of being a man. I think it's called Notes on Being a Man. And
sounds right.
yeah. And he talks about the negative things about the manosphere, all of that. And after his book came out, I have not read it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should do that for
a future episode.
I have not read it, but I've listened to him speak for a long time, so I probably know just about all the anecdotes that are in it. And he said that he started to get some backlash from, I think he probably called them like TikTok therapists. And they were talking about how he doesn't know what he's talking about and he's trying to be an expert of something that he's not an expert of. And it bothered me because when I listen to him, I don't always agree with what he has to say, but he doesn't say it like you do have to agree with it. And it made me feel bad about therapists.
Interesting.
Because shouldn't we be more curious and want to understand the bigger picture here?
Yeah.
And I think there's a beautiful opportunity they lose.
Kind of shutting that out.
Yeah, by talking bad about someone being vulnerable in what they're doing by just saying like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That it was very clear he was saying like, I'm just going to tell you about my experience and what it's meant to me and what I've learned and some research that I put next to it.
Right.
And
which in all reality is maybe just as, if not more valuable sometimes than the textbook knowledge, right? Like our own experiences. I'm not saying everybody's opinion is right. Opinions are opinions, right?
Right.
But our own experiences drive our beliefs, drive our current understanding, and drive maybe our future beliefs, right? So I think that it's interesting that I love where you're kind of coming from there, then, and the whole as a therapist, right? And kind of shifting that mindset.
Yeah. So my thought was, okay, all these, not all, but a few of these therapists out there are coming out likely to be divisive.
Sure.
Because divisive is what gets you more followers and more clicks and more views. And that's a really sad motivation to do something. As a therapist, that's a sad motivation that they would do that. And so for me, I was thinking, okay, well, what if as a therapist and as a male, my voice could kind of be added into that a little bit on the opposite direction of, yes, maybe it is important for us to just be vulnerable. And he was being vulnerable and talking about his experience. And we don't have to go out there and try and find all the things we can criticize about everyone as much as we have to maybe just do the thing that we're saying is important. And I think that's what the idea of this was and very much what it's become, like modeling man up together. We are trying to man up together, but not just telling people what to do to become what we decide is a better man. We're trying to figure out what will help us be better men. And if along the way someone listens to it and goes, oh, that makes sense to me too, then great. And if someone listens and says, oh, that doesn't make sense to me, but it brings them to think about something that does, that's just as good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I love that. That's really cool. That's interesting. So for me, obviously, one of the first motivation for me was I trust Alex. I love Alex. I would love to do this with him because I've kind of progressed through life, through my career. One of the things that I've really found some passion for is the concept of emotional intelligence and bringing in your emotions into your day to day and how that impacts everything. And that was one of the things for me of like, I continue to explore that. Right. I'm also a big believer in understanding how the mindset of like this diversity mindset, like everybody's background impacts who they are today and who they are tomorrow and why they do the things that they do. And I think those were really the motivations for me to say, hey, like, I want to explore that more. I want to look at that more. Obviously, we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? My wife is a therapist. You're a therapist. I've lived in that kind of world surrounded by therapists for a while.
Which is why the whole ask a therapist, ask a regular guy is becoming kind of BS here because of all this damn insight that you have.
But it's been showing or maybe thinking about how I can use some of those experiences, right? And I think what's really cool about this podcast and the way you explained it to me, and then also the way that we've kind of continued to morph this into something is very much embracing that, right? Like therapist on the podcast and the expert in those aspects, and also just a regular guy who has some thoughts and opinions and wants to share kind of what his thoughts and opinions are. So that for me is why, since we've started, why do I want to continue? Well, first off, this is like planned hangout time.
Yeah.
What did your brother call it? Right? Like this is, hey, we're gonna force each other to hang out with each other, which
it's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe less beer pong. Anyway, but
maybe also healthier.
There you go. But it's been, and I think we'll talk about this in the section too, is like I've seen a change in myself, like a change in my mindset, like the way I think about things, the way maybe I do some things. And so it's been really enjoyable to kind of see that happen. And it doesn't hurt when I hear from, my community, my friends, people that listen, coworkers, whatnot, and they say, hey, your podcast is cool. And I'm like, awesome. I hope you're not just being nice because we're friends, but it is cool to hear that. And it's really appreciated. And like we always say, if we're helping even another person, that's awesome, but we're helping ourselves. So
for sure. Yeah. I appreciate you kind of circling back around to that too, because it is right. You said the expert in the therapy field between the two of us, and you have your opinions and all of that. And I think an interesting part of this too is us talking about that. We're trying not to make this something where we're telling people what to do and what's right and what's wrong. We're just trying to figure it out together.
Yeah.
And I think that does
it makes
us more
real.
thoughtful.
Yeah.
It makes us better people. And if we're hoping people are listening to something meaningful, then it's more likely that they're going to learn something by seeing other people do it than by being told, you need to do this because you're not doing it now. And so let's just do it ourselves.
Right. One of the other things that's been cool for me too is I've been on podcasts before as a guest. I do a lot of public speaking in my current job, my previous job, but obviously all of those conversations, all of that is on topics that I am an expert in, or at least I'm more versed in those topics, right? Being horses. This is not my area of expertise. And so it's been a lot of fun to like step out of that comfort zone a little bit, to step out of that bubble of security of like, I can go and talk about horses to anybody who will listen, or most people who just won't listen, and I'll just still talk about horses to them.
Guys, you don't know how much I've edited out of these because I know you don't want to listen to so much about horses.
So true. But that being said, like this has been so cool because I don't have to talk about horses, where it makes sense. Sure, I'm going to throw it in there, but that's been a cool part of it. So for you, have you seen any differences in maybe? I'm going to ask you two different questions, either in your personal life, kind of how you just are on a daily basis, but knowing that therapy is your profession, have you seen a change in how you do therapy, how you view therapy, how you're viewing maybe some of the conversations with your clients? Has this changed anything for you?
Yeah, it has. Especially when I was just thinking about the podcast, I noticed the change. But as we continue to do it, I think it's gotten clearer for me how I realize there needs to be more importance, more intentionality in my mind of truly understanding the client sitting in front of me, what from their past is speaking to them when they're talking about the challenges that they're having.
Interesting.
Right? What did they learn about what it means to be a man when they're in a relationship with someone else who really just wants them to be soft and vulnerable and show up in that way? Because it's not right. That's the same. I can't just say, okay, well, you do that. You should do this instead. We have to get into, why does this actually make sense for you? And I think that's something that we're doing. Why does it make sense that we're basically built into a certain form and idea of masculinity? But what if we can kind of reform it for ourselves.
I love that.
And so I guess that just answered both of them in a way, because that is what I do when I'm sitting in front of my clients, and for sure female clients as well.
Yes.
There's a similar, like, what did you learn about what it means to be a woman, and what did you learn from the women in your life? What did you learn from men in your life based on how they showed up in masculine ways?
The concepts, I think, go across all these different gender norms, whatever you want to call them. I think there's definite carryover for sure between all of it.
Yeah. But I do try and do it for myself as well. And
Yes.
think about that, and also be careful about the way that I show up as a man, because I would like to show up in a certain way. It was interesting. When I asked Noah if he wanted to be on the podcast, he hesitated for a little. And so much of me wanted to say, don't be a baby. I was like, no, that's exactly what we're trying to not do in Man Up Together. And so I held it to myself.
I love it.
I was like, no, we don't shame other people and call them babies when they don't do something. But see, I'm trying to continue to grow.
I love that. That's awesome. Perfect example.
So let's shift over here to the next thing we want to talk about. So now we're going to talk about some of the podcasts that we do listen to, what we like about them, what we get out of them, why we continue to want to listen to them. So how about you? I actually talked about one already. So you want to start here?
Yeah. So I mean, there's two. I'll hit on two of them that I listen to. So I do listen to New Heights podcast, which is the Kelsey Brothers podcast.
Just beat us, man.
By a little, just by nose. Just because that Taylor Swift episode, I think, was the one that kicked him over the edge. I think, for me, obviously it started for a couple of reasons. I love sports. I love football. And the two of them talk about sports and football. I also love Travis Kelce. I love Jason Kelce. I think they're both phenomenal athletes. I think they're both good people also, which is why I think I've continued to listen to the podcast.
Nice.
It's great to hear the two of them talk about their shared experiences. It's great to hear the two of them as brothers too. And I think that's a big part of it for me, is the relationship that they have with each other. Obviously, the experience that they have is first off, two athletes in high school, two athletes in college, two athletes in the NFL, but then also two athletes that are two of the best at their individual positions to have ever played those positions. I mean, it's a really unique, I think, relationship.
Unique family.
Right? I mean, good job, Donna Kelsey, on those genetics, right? But I think that there's just something about listening to the two of them, and then they're still just like brothers at heart, and they joke with each other and they rib each other, learning and listening about their family together. And obviously Jason with his multiple children and his wife, how Travis fits into that, and obviously with Taylor Swift coming into the picture. I don't think, but what's cool is like their podcast has been going on for so long. It's like, I knew Travis before he knew Taylor Swift.
Right. It's a plot twist. It wasn't actually a part of it.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's one of them. And so I continue to listen to it. I also love the guests that they bring on a lot of different personalities, whether it's from the sports world or outside of the sports world, from entertainment or pop culture. And so I think that's an interesting part of it. They just had a recent episode with Tom Brady, and interesting dude, interesting character. But he talked a little bit about when he was in college and he was not a starter at the University of Michigan, and his mindset, and he actually worked with a sports psychologist, and the mindset shift that he had to have. And so anyway, I think there's a lot of those messages. So that's the first one. The second one that I listened to is an airplane podcast. It's called the Fighter Pilot Podcast. And again, I initially started listening to it because I like airplanes. I like military aviation. The host of the podcast is a former fighter pilot named Vincent Aiello. One of the things that he does in all of his podcasts when he does the interviews with his guests is he talks about their background and who they were prior to becoming whatever they were in the military. Oftentimes it's a pilot podcast, right? And it's been really, really fascinating to hear those stories and to hear who these people are. The most recent one that I listened to, he was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and he talked about the mental health challenges that he had both in the Marine Corps. When he left the Marine Corps, he wrote a book about it that I'm currently reading. And so I think one of the things that I love about the podcast that I do listen to is it blends my love for that topic, whether it's football or airplanes, but also with this newfound, I would say, appreciation and passion for understanding emotions, mental health, mental stability, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's for me. So outside of the one that you mentioned, what are some other podcasts you listen to?
So I used to listen to a lot of political podcasts.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know that I would have pegged it.
I got really burned out by that.
Yeah.
So I kept one.
Okay.
It's like politics, but it's funny.
Okay.
Like he is a comedian
Sure.
who does it. And that's the only way I can tolerate any form of politics
I
anymore
think that's
these
the only way
days.
most of us can
So
politics
there's
right
that
now.
one. Pivot I talked
Mhm.
about. I also listened to Scott Galloway's other podcasts where he talks about the stock market and business and those kind of things that are my passion as well.
Yeah.
And then the rest are football.
You did some fantasy football podcasts, don't
so
you?
one of them is fantasy football that Noah got me into.
Okay.
And one of them is just football
Okay.
that Noah got me into. I think he listens to like 1,000.
All of them.
I think Noah listens to podcasts on 2x speed. I listen on a little more than
Sure.
I think like 1.3 or something.
Yeah.
This is on 2 because he has so many. And so,
Gotta get him in.
yeah. And so as he's listening right now, we're talking so fast.
Thanks, Noah.
Yeah. But I like both angles. Like I like to play fantasy football and I like to also get like the real football analysis, which is fun. Oh, there's one more. Diary of a CEO.
Interesting.
It's Stephen Bartlett, and he interviews people who he's interested in. It's not always CEOs,
Sure.
but people who he's interested in and the topics that he's interested in. And it's a really, really deep dive, like sometimes over 2 hours. And
oh, wow.
he asks great questions. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm realizing the podcasts I like are probably more about what it's like to listen to the people talk. I did pick these topics in the first place, but I've also listened to more podcasts that haven't stuck. And Kara and Scott in Pivot, they have a really funny relationship and pick on each other. And he also tells dick jokes, which that
helps, right?
That's a fun part of that. And she tells him he's an idiot for doing that. So it's great. The fantasy football podcast that I listen to is like 3 really good friends who are just ribbing on each other and having a good time. One of them actually said something recently where he was talking to a coworker who was like, yeah, I still listen to your podcast. I don't really like your fantasy football advice anymore, but I just like to hang out with you guys. It's like, that's kind of what it feels like. Just like hanging out with people who have a really good dynamic with each other. And it sounded like you were kind of talking about that as well.
Yeah.
Where, like the Kelsey brothers, you're just like, I want to hang out with them. And the pilot, he's like, how he interacts with other pilots and things. Like I think that's an interesting thing that we get these days out of media, out of podcasts in general, because we're listening to people have some form of relationship. And sometimes that can feel good to witness something that feels right.
Yeah. Well, I think I really like what you kind of brought out there of like, you can have someone that's really passionate about what they're talking about, but it can be incredibly boring to listen to them, right? I listened to a couple other podcasts on grain commodities, which nobody cares about, but they're harder to listen to. The information is important for me and for what I do, but they're harder to listen to. And it's not necessarily just because the topic is a little dry, but I think it's also maybe the way that it's being presented, is not right. Who is it? Walter Cronkite, back in the day on the news, he would tell the news and everybody loved my dad would listen to Walter Cronkite tell the news. He'd tell me one day, he's like, I could listen to him read the phone book, right? And I think it's just because of his presentation, his voice, how he got that messaging out there. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy with you, and hopefully others see that as well. Like, I think we have a good rapport. Like we
it feels good when I do it,
right? Yeah, I enjoy having conversations with you, and I think that's a big part of I think maybe what makes some of these podcasts more or less successful.
That makes me think again about the Diary of a CEO because he has like some very obscure things on, not things I'm always interested in. Yeah. But if I'm listening to it, I find myself being fascinated about how he asks the questions that he does, what he's trying, like I can see what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
And I can also tell sometimes when he agrees or disagrees based on how he asks the question, but he never says, I disagree or whatever. He'll like kind of ask the same question, but from like 1 degree over. I'm like, he's trying to break something in there right there. So it's about the dynamic that's happening, more like how something is being presented more than what's being presented. I like that you would do that. You should probably talk to your grain commodities guys and tell them to figure out a way to be a little bit more creative and interesting.
Well, and I think too, it goes back to what we were saying earlier a little bit about even if your message maybe isn't the best message, if you can get someone to listen to it and get people excited about it and get people interested about it, I think it continues that. I mean, there's a lot of podcasts, and I think one of the number 1 or 2 podcasts that's out there, we don't mention which one it is. There's a political swing to a lot of the things that are said on the podcast where I don't think everybody that's listening to it agrees. with the podcast,
Right.
but they continue to listen to it and they continue to try to be involved in the podcast
Yeah.
because they want to continue just to be absorbed within in that environment and that conversation. And so, I mean, I remember, growing up, my dad, my grandpa will listen to Howard Stern and it's on the radio. I think like radio shows are the original podcast,
Yeah.
right? And I know that my dad and my grandfather both did not agree with everything Howard Stern said, but it was like all the people around him, the way that he carried himself on the radio, all of those things, they were like, I'm gonna listen to Howard Stern, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that goes back to, I think, all of what we do is in life, if we can put ourselves out there with conviction, if we can put ourselves out there and believe what we're saying is important and matters and has a purpose, I think it gets other people, you can rally other people around you to those thoughts.
Yeah, I like that. So we're kind of verging on the next part here. So
coming off the cliff.
Yeah, so let's move into that because
Yeah.
I think we're talking about some very interesting things. So the last thing we're going to talk about is what are some ways that podcasts do end up not having a positive influence on people? And you're helping me with this idea of with great power comes great responsibility,
There you go,
right?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man's uncle or whatever.
What's his name? Uncle Ben, right?
Uncle Ben, yeah.
Uncle Ben, there you go.
That superheroes and villains have one thing in common. It's that they both have special powers.
Right.
Well, the thing they don't have in common is, are they using it to help people or to hurt people?
Yeah.
And that's where I think of popular podcasts are mostly popular because you're good at making people interested in listening to you talk.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you're talking about, they're interested in listening to you talk. You have that power. Are you using it in ways that are bringing people together toward a healthy, positive goal? Or are you doing it in a way that is maybe you're not careful enough or thoughtful enough to realize could be hurting people?
Yeah. Well, it's how you influence people too.
Yeah.
I mean, your voice, your actions. One of the maybe things that we didn't talk about in the beginning about where podcasts can be a problem, if you will, is the audience isn't controlled in a podcast. And what do I mean by that is you can be 12 years old and listen to a podcast, or you can be 62 years old and listen to the same podcast.
Right. Like if a show comes on at 11 p.m., how TV used to be, you're mostly just getting the older people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So your messaging, while you may say, and we talked about this on the Manosphere episode, where there was a question of, well, who do you think your audience is? And the audience was actually like 12 to 14-year-old boys. And that's a bad deal, right? And I think, we can talk about where these things are bad. I mean, this week the Tate brothers got arrested.
Yeah.
Everybody's innocent until they're proven guilty.
But I think that's a great example because some people can say it's really clear that these are not good people.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole other group of people that say that people that probably were drawn to them by the way that they can get you to be interested in listening to them speak, that have bought into their ideas because it feels good to listen to them speak. And they don't say, oh, but their ideas are bad. They say, but these are the ideas of people who I trust and who I admire. Yeah. And so they must be good and they must be right. And it must be what I should be doing in my life as well. I think these are, and again, innocent until proven guilty, whatever it is. But these are These are ways to say, no, definitively, some people aren't good people.
Well, and I wonder too, like if, historians, the researchers can go back and look at this, I wonder how many of the listeners of the Tate Brothers podcast started out with views on misogyny or anti-Semitism or whenever any of the hateful messages that were spewed on that podcast, how many started that way versus how many finished that way or feel that way, now. And I think
like
that
we're kind of shoehorned into this being all of our ideals, even if you're just enjoying one little thing.
Because of exactly what you said, right? Like
he's
right, wrong, or indifferent. He was an engaged, Andrew Tate was an engaging person in his podcast. Yeah. Obviously, neither one of us, I won't speak for you, but I'm going to speak for you. Neither one of us agree with 9.99% of what comes out of his mouth. But I think that,
And to quote Aaron Rodgers, do your own research on what they're actually being arrested for. But it's some clear things that like, this isn't, we can decide if their ideas are good or bad. These are people who have done some very bad things and aren't motivated to be positive and take care of other people. And their actions have shown that. And so it's really hard to think in most of their life, they have these horrible, horrible actions. But in the way that they disseminate their information, maybe that's where they choose to be good. No, I think you are who you are and you do what you do.
I wonder too if, there's a conversation here about how a podcast can change a person. And we talked about how this podcast is influencing our lives and our behavior. But I wonder too, if that can go in the other direction where maybe you have success because you're an engaging person, you have a lot of listeners, and your first 3, 4, 5 podcasts are really good. And then you go, oh crap, I don't have any more information to talk about. So I know though that when I make extreme points, it gets people interested, and that's the drug for me, right? That's the high for me, is people are interested. So therefore, I'm going to continue to go further and further and push the envelope a little bit more.
Yeah, that takes me back to basically the reason that this podcast started, right? The therapists who are attacking other people for,
what do they call it? Clip farming.
Yeah,
clip farming.
That. Right. My hope is that therapist was like, oh, I probably have some good things to share with other people. And it might make my business more visible, which would be great. But also I can help people in small clips here and there. And I think you probably are so right that what became the mission was, oh, well, I need more people to see me. I need to get more views and more, I don't know if you get endorsements or whatever it is, and just more ways to earn from this, right? They talk about like TikTok therapists aren't actually therapists anymore because they're too busy making their money in that way that means the mission changes, right? I love the way you're saying that it changes from, I want to be thoughtful about this, to, is there something I can say that can get the most people engaged as possible and can kind of ruin the mission.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, I am not a Tate Brothers historian by any stretch of the imagination.
Do your own research.
Do my own research. I will not be doing any research. But I wonder, was there ever that type of a mindset? And again, I don't know. I don't believe so. I think both of them are pretty terrible people in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that there's probably other places out there. There's other places in the podcast sphere where I think people's messages became more extreme or more maybe tailored to a viewpoint that wasn't necessarily the intention.
Right. I didn't get a lot of attention for being really thoughtful, but closer down the middle.
Right.
I got attention for something I said that was really far right or really far left. And so I'm going to almost radicalize myself in order to be seen more and become more successful in that way. And so, that's a sad thing. I would love for lots and lots and lots of people to see us, but I don't think we're going to sell out to get there. I don't think we're going to say, okay, how can we shift this to be more sensational and radical and wild for people to be like, oh my gosh, have you listened to that?
This is our message, guys. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, it's okay too. But we're going to stick with this message because we think it's helpful and it's something powerful to us, right? Yeah. So well, it's fun.
Podcasting about podcasting.
Podcasting about podcasting.
There we go.
It's interesting. If you guys have any podcasts that you listen to that, maybe
that we should,
or maybe there's a journey you've been on with a podcast. I think that's always fun. I hear people talk about, I've been on a journey with this podcast. It's like, I don't know what that means all the time, but I kind of understand what it means. But if you've been on a journey with a podcast and you want to talk about it, let us know. Because I think it's always fun to hear kind of what your experience is in that regard. So
it's fun. You should share podcasts that you like with people. So
like this one.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good one.
There you go. Yeah. So let's end now by going into Ask a Therapist, Ask a Regular Guy.
I'll fill that regular guy role, Noah. We got it.
Yeah, but again, it's becoming clearer and clearer that you kind of suck at it because you've been working so hard on yourself and insight, and maybe we'll just have to change the way we call this. But
Ask a Therapist, Ask
Alex, Ask Bobby.
There you go.
Yeah. So today we got a question that sounded pretty specific to our mission here, and so really wanted to share that one. Liked that a lot. They're kind of struggling with the idea of vulnerability. So
we talked about that once or twice.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So they said, I listened to the podcast and, you're always talking about vulnerability and the value of vulnerability. And he's talking about the struggle he has to feel like that makes sense in his relationship. Like however much we talk about it, he said, I'm struggling with this idea because a part of me believes that if I'm struggling with something, if I'm affected by something, I need to first figure it out, and I need to make sense of it, and I need to process it before I bring it to my partner, because that would be too messy. I think you used literally like messy.
Yeah.
And I guess the question was, is vulnerability really that important if you're going to, like, isn't messiness going to mess with your relationship in a way? And so I liked that a lot. I feel like that fits really well with, again, what we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the question, and I don't know that there's a straightforward answer to it for me, at least. The vulnerability part of it, I think society has coded vulnerability as weakness. And I think that that's still pervasive, no matter what your mindset is. And again, as you and I have tried to continue to maybe have the argument that vulnerability doesn't always have to equal, or should probably not equal, weakness, and in some ways kind of makes you stronger. There is still, again, that societal coding of vulnerability as weakness. And so what I would say is, maybe don't think of it as, if I'm going to be vulnerable, is that going to make things messy? I think vulnerability opens us up possibly to be our true selves, unlocks some of that, if you will. That being said, I know that everybody processes things differently. There are some people, people in my life that I know that need to take the time to process something. I'm not that way, and oftentimes it comes back to bite me in the ass. I'm very much I'm going to solve this problem, and I'm going to do it right this way, and it's going to be the first thought that comes into my brain. I would say 50% of the time, if I would have thought about it, I probably would have done it differently. Maybe not better or worse, just differently. So I think that depending on how this person processes challenges, I think it's still fine to process them individually and work through your challenges. What I would caution against, though, is maybe like that isolationism, right? Where doing things and processing it yourself, but maybe inviting your partner into that space with you allows the vulnerability to be there, but also allows you to still process it in the way. So maybe the conversation is, I hear what you're saying. I understand we're having XYZ challenge, whatever it is. I need to process this. Here's my thought process as I talk through this. I don't want, maybe this is that fixer thing that we were talking about before. I'm not looking for a fix. I'm literally going to maybe just say the words that are on my brain right now, and then we can work through it. So it maybe brings the vulnerability and the working things out individually, maybe brings those two things together. Maybe not the clearest thought process there, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, Mr. Therapist?
Yeah, I like what you're saying, because one thing that you're bringing in here is this idea of, well, is vulnerability good or is it bad? Is it important or is it not? And I feel like you're kind of trying to move into like, well, you should do it. Here's a way that you could do it. Here's a way that it could be more accessible. So from the therapist side, I'll kind of process it differently than like, maybe there are ways to be vulnerable. I'll talk more about like what's the difference between being vulnerable and not in those moments, and why does it maybe help and why does it not? One thing you said is maybe it's not messy to be, it is messier to be vulnerable. If you can come to someone and say, hey, I was thinking about this thing and it stressed me out, but I've thought about how to fix it, and here's how I'm going to fix it, and that isn't messy.
Sure.
And if you say, I'm struggling with this thing and it's like keeping me up at night and I'm just kind of stuck with it and I just can't.
I like how you frame that.
That is messier
by definition,
right? And and I think that's an important thing to embrace with vulnerability as well, right? We are always saying being vulnerable is the more uncomfortable, scarier, we can now like messier thing to do. But why? Right? You also named isolation when you were talking about it. I think that is the alternative. If you're being vulnerable with somebody.
That's a good point.
If you're trying to clean up your mess in your head and then bring it to them nice and clean,
so
you're isolating yourself.
Can you not be vulnerable to yourself?
I guess you can.
Like, right? I think about it this way. Like, if
you can lie to yourself, right? Like you can not admit something and avoid what maybe we know is the truth, and kind of try and convince yourself something isn't real when it is. And if you go in the other direction, I guess you are being vulnerable with yourself.
Like, I know. I believe that being vulnerable typically involves putting yourself in front of another person and being
vulnerable. But vulnerable, right? Like, I think the official version of vulnerability is putting yourself in a place to be hurt.
Interesting.
We can only hurt ourselves so much.
True.
On the outside, on the inside, sure, we can do a lot of damage, but when we bring it on the outside, that's where we become really able to be hurt.
Interesting. That's a good definition.
And you're being messy, and you're talking about feelings, which men aren't supposed to do, right?
Bottle that shit out.
Yeah. And you're showing, you called it weakness, right? Like being able to be hurt, that shows some version of weakness. And that's really dangerous and it's messy and it's hard. But doing that with someone gives them the opportunity. Yeah, it gives them the opportunity to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the only way they have the opportunity to show you, even though you showed your vulnerable self, I took more care of you. I didn't hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make this even scarier for you next time. I actually reminded you how much you matter to me and appreciated how much I matter to you for you being vulnerable with me. Right? That's the thing that feels different in the isolation versus vulnerability side of it is we're giving someone else an opportunity to remind us that we matter to them, that we're important to them, that you may not be able to be safe to share this with everyone, but you can share it with me.
I love that. What you just said there really resonated. Vulnerability is opening yourself up to be hurt by somebody else. But in doing so, it's the only way you open yourself up to know that somebody else cares about you at the same time. And I think I really like how you just kind of flip that around, because when you first said that definition, I agreed with you. I think it's a great definition, but it challenges it a little bit because you're like, oof, then maybe I don't want to be vulnerable because I'm going to be hurt. But if you flip that around and say, but also it allows you to be cared for and loved and, dare we say the word, helped by somebody else, I think that really maybe flips that definition and makes it a little less scary.
Right. And listening to the way the question was asked also, it speaks a lot to the idea of what traditionally we've learned to be masculine. It's you should be confident and decisive and buttoned up and strong and not
vulnerable,
not messy, not
messy.
vulnerable. And on the other side of that, what we're now talking about with vulnerabilities, it's actually being brave.
Yeah.
Because if there's a chance for you to get hurt and you do it anyways, that's bravery. If you only do things that you know there's 100% chance you're going to be okay, that's not brave. That's just finding the safest, easiest path to go down all the time.
Comfort.
Only those brave paths we go down are the ones that help us grow and build and grow relationships, connect further with someone because we gave them a chance to show us that our idea of what it means to be a man doesn't have to be the only way we exist. We can also be seen for our messy parts and for our weak parts and our soft parts, and maybe even more appreciated for it. Because then that other person feels like, oh, you trust me and you want to get close to me and you want me to see you fully. They're not going to go, ugh, this baby. They're going to go, oh my gosh, this feels deeper to be in connection with you in this relationship. And so that
I love that.
Yeah.
That was really helpful though. So
this is good. And you guys probably have noticed by now, but we've just kind of decided to go fully anonymous here.
Yeah.
And so, this felt like actually a very vulnerable question to bring up.
Yeah.
Even though it's talking about having fear to be vulnerable. So I love that. But on that note, we aren't even thinking, should we share who says it anymore? So please feel free to be open to send us any of these at questions@manuptogetherpodcast.com. You can send it on Instagram. Instagram is something that we manage, so it's not going to a million different people.
Good point.
So you can message us on that, and we would love to be able to share something on that. And we're not going to divulge who it is unless we divulge who sends a funny Reddit to us. Thank you, Max.
We're not appreciate it.
We're not going to divulge actual people's information.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this is fun. Appreciate it. For those that are listening, thank you again. Really do appreciate you going on this podcasting journey with us. Yeah. Hopefully this podcast about podcasts was a good podcast. Please subscribe, watch us on YouTube, comment on YouTube, Instagram, questions@manuptogetherpodcast.com. We're enjoying this. We're going to keep doing it.
Yes, it's something that's feeling good for us. Must be feeling good for at least one other person out there. And so thank you. We really appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing you next week when we continue to try and man up together.
The Man Up Together podcast was produced and edited by Alex Peskin and Bobby Jacobs. Special thank you to our wives, family, friends, and coworkers who have supported us in so many ways throughout this process. You can find us on Instagram at Man Up Together Podcast, and you can email us at questions@manuptogetherpodcast.com. If you are interested in joining us on this journey, please subscribe, and share this with someone you care about. Thank you for listening. See you next week.